the question for me about, who's investing or who will do the investing, they're kind of there are multiple dimensions to that question. One is just a purely practical dimension, right? Which is, where's the money coming from? Pure and simple. And I would say that increasingly, I don't have the figures to hand. First thing to say is it's not enough. Okay, like that's it's always a good place to start. It's not enough, but it's growing, and there are more and more parts of the world that are taking an interest in the continent. So for me, one of the important trends, and this was kind of kicked off around the turn of the century, and it has been consistent ever since, and is really accelerated, is that we've gone from a situation in which 20, 30 years ago, much of the world wasn't particularly interested in Africa, to a situation today where there really isn't a part of the world that isn't keen to build economic or commercial ties with the continent, whether that is, your quote unquote traditional partners in the West, or the so-called new partners, in places like the Middle East and Asia. China obviously is investing heavily, and China is actually increasingly now looking at investing in renewable energy, ramping that up, and I think you're going to see a significant ramping up of that in the coming years. They're behind some of those major investments into Morocco that I mentioned earlier. The Gulf states, I think, they're stepping up quite significantly. They have done in recent years. Places like Turkey, and there's, here I'm going to be a little bit critical, maybe even a bit controversial. There's lots of rhetoric coming out of places like the EU, a lot of rhetoric coming out of places like the US, but there's not that much of putting your money where your mouth is from those regions, I would say, at this point, which has a lot to do with how they perceive the continent. But the long story short there is that you're seeing an increasing diversification in sort of international capital that is heading to Africa, and that can only be a good thing. It fosters competition. It provides the ability to build partnerships with different actors that have different strengths, and all of that is good news. Now, another dimension to this for me is, and in a way I kind of touched on this, is that we cannot ignore that we are currently living through a time of rather consequential change in terms of the global economic, political, and geopolitical order. I'm not going to, touch on anything too controversial, but all I would say is, in terms of, the future of climate action, future of investing in climate smart investing, and investing to support climate action in a meaningful way on the continent, a lot of African governments right now, I would say, need to ask themselves an important question, which is, which way is the wind blowing? What does the future of the global economy look like? What is our position within that? And what does that mean for our external partnerships? I don't want to go too far into this because it gets very contentious very quickly. But the way I would put it quite simply is that you have old partners and then you have new partners. And it's not necessarily the old partners that are going to change the game.